The chimes of Big Ben echoed across London as Veronica Clark hurried through the bustling streets, clutching an old briefcase tightly. The chilly March wind seeped through her thin coat, but it couldn't extinguish her determination. This wasn't just a job interview. For Veronica, this was her last chance to salvage her life and provide for Noah, her 6-year-old son she had promised to protect at all costs. "Do you think they'll give you the job, Mom?" Noah asked, his cheerful voice warming the frosty air. The little boy sat beside her on their final bus ride to West London, his wide, curious eyes filled with innocence. "I'll do my best," Veronica replied with a smile, though her heart churned with anxiety. "And you, remember to behave yourself with Miss Margaret, okay?" Noah nodded, his small hand clutching his familiar asthma inhaler. "I'll read my books and won't run around." The bus came to a halt in front of a narrow road leading to a luxurious neighborhood where towering trees shaded grand mansions. Veronica stepped off, the sound of her worn heels clicking against the stone pavement. Before her stood a massive iron gate, behind which loomed an imposing mansion with polished stone walls and large windows reflecting the pale morning sun. Taking a deep breath, Veronica pressed the gate buzzer. A stern female voice crackled through the intercom. "Ms. Clark, correct? I'm Mrs. Carlyle, Mr. Blackwell's housekeeper. Please come in." The gate opened automatically with a soft clank, and Veronica stepped into a sprawling, meticulously trimmed garden. Everything here exuded grandeur and coldness, as if designed to impress rather than to be loved. She shivered slightly, unsure if it was from the weather or the heavy atmosphere of the place. Mrs. Carlyle, a middle-aged woman with her hair neatly pinned up and sharp eyes, stood waiting at the entrance. "This way, please. Mr. Blackwell doesn't appreciate being kept waiting." Veronica followed her into the mansion, where opulence overwhelmed her senses. Soaring ceilings, sparkling crystal chandeliers, and cool marble floors. Despite the abundant light, the air carried an inexplicable melancholy. The doors to the living room opened, revealing Christopher Blackwell, a man seated in a custom-designed wheelchair, his presence radiating authority despite the weariness in his eyes. He regarded Veronica with a cold, gray gaze devoid of warmth. "You're the 7th candidate I've interviewed this month," he said, his deep voice tinged with indifference. "What makes you any different from the others?" Veronica swallowed, steadying her voice. "I don't just need this job. I'll do everything to keep it." Chris smirked slightly, a hint of curiosity flashing in his eyes. "Then let's get started. But don't get your hopes up. I'm not easily impressed." For Veronica, this was only the beginning of a challenging journey, but she believed she could endure it. She wasn't just searching for a job. She was searching for a brighter future for herself and Noah. Welcome to today's story. Let us know in the comments which city you're watching from so we can see how far this story reaches across the world. Don't forget to subscribe to Soul Stories to catch meaningful stories like this every day. Chapter 1. Struggles to Connect. The early morning sunlight streamed through the grand windows of the mansion, casting a glow on the polished marble floors. Veronica carefully arranged the care supplies according to the instructions Mrs. Carlyle had just given her. The thick notebook in her hands detailed Christopher Blackwell's routines and preferences, precise schedules, his preferred type of coffee, and his absolute intolerance for any deviations in his daily processes. "Mr. Blackwell does not tolerate tardiness or carelessness," Mrs. Carlyle emphasized. "You must remember that. And don't try to be friendly. He doesn't appreciate pity." Veronica pressed her lips together and nodded. She knew she had to remain calm and professional if she wanted to keep this job. But nothing came easy. Chris Blackwell, with his cold demeanor and sharp remarks, missed no opportunity to test Veronica's patience. "Did you mix the coffee to the exact ratio?" Chris asked as Veronica placed a cup on his desk. "Yes, according to Mrs. Carlyle's instructions," she replied gently. Chris took a sip, then raised an eyebrow. "Too bitter. Do it again." Veronica gripped the tray tightly, but she responded with a composed smile. "I'll fix it right away." Despite the difficulties, Veronica remained patient. She refused to let Chris's cutting remarks discourage her, understanding that he wasn't just a demanding employer, but also a lonely man burdened by his own pain. She saw it in his eyes whenever he stared silently out the window. The challenges didn't end with the job. Veronica also had to balance taking care of Chris and looking after Noah. She needed to drop him off at school every morning and pick him up in the afternoon, all while constantly worrying about his asthma. One day when her babysitter unexpectedly canceled, Veronica had no choice but to bring Noah to the mansion with her. She explained the situation to Mrs. Carlyle, who reluctantly allowed Noah to accompany her. Noah's curiosity was piqued as he explored the grand mansion, his eyes lighting up at the sight of the paintings on the walls and the antique piano in the living room. But what fascinated him most was Chris's advanced wheelchair. "Does it go fast, Mom?" Noah asked, his face full of excitement. Chris frowned at the question and turned toward Noah. "It's not built for racing," he replied curtly. Veronica quickly pulled Noah close. "Noah, don't ask that." "I'm sorry, Mr. Blackwell." But Noah, in his innocent way, didn't stop. "I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's really cool. I want to be an astronaut, so I want to build things like that." Chris froze. His eyes, usually filled with weariness and sarcasm, flickered with a hint of curiosity. "An astronaut?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. "Yes," Noah nodded enthusiastically. "I want to go to Mars and explore new planets." Chris said nothing more, but he seemed to quietly observe Noah for a little longer than usual. That afternoon, as Noah played with his toy blocks on the floor, Veronica sat by Chris, carefully reviewing the checklist of tasks. The usual tension between them seemed to have eased slightly. "You always keep everything under control, don't you?" Chris suddenly remarked. Veronica looked up at him. "I don't have much of a choice. Being a single mother means always being prepared for everything." Chris smirked faintly but said nothing more. Veronica, noticing the lingering sadness in his eyes, spoke softly. "Everyone needs help at some point, whether they realize it or not." Chris stared at her, as though weighing the meaning of her words. A moment of silence passed before he turned away, but unlike before, he didn't offer any rebuttal. It wasn't a major breakthrough, but to Veronica, it was a small step forward, and sometimes a single small step could change the course of an entire journey. Chapter 2. A Fragile Bond Forms. The Blackwell mansion in the afternoon exuded a serene yet distant beauty. The dark wooden walls and towering bookshelves in the library seemed to swallow every sound. After finishing her morning tasks, Veronica decided to try something new to soften the mansion's cold, unwelcoming atmosphere. She sat at the antique piano placed prominently in the library, lightly running her fingers across the keys. The room filled with the classical melodies of Debussy's Clair de Lune. Veronica wasn't a professional pianist, but she had learned the instrument as a child and knew how to infuse emotion into each note. Chris, seated in a corner of the room with his eyes fixed on his computer screen, paused as the first notes reached him. He said nothing, but his hands hovering over the keyboard stilled. Veronica continued to play, deliberately ignoring his usual cold gaze. When the piece ended, Chris turned his head, his expression slightly softer than usual. "You play piano," he remarked evenly. Veronica smiled as she stood. "Music makes everything feel a bit warmer. I thought you might like it." Chris didn't reply, but he didn't object when she began playing again on subsequent afternoons. While Veronica sought connection through music, Noah found a new fascination in Chris's impressive collection of astronomy books. One morning, as Chris read the newspaper in the living room, Noah approached the bookshelves cautiously. "Mr. Blackwell, may I borrow this book?" Noah asked, pointing to a thick volume with planets on the cover. Chris looked up, his piercing eyes scrutinizing the boy. "What does a 6-year-old want with that?" "I want to know why Mars is red," Noah replied earnestly, "and if people can live there." Chris's lips twitched in mild irritation, but instead of dismissing Noah, he gestured to the chair opposite him. "Sit down. I'll explain." From a distance, Veronica watched this unexpected interaction, her heart warming. Chris, who had built walls around himself, was slowly letting them down thanks to Noah's innocent questions. One evening, after Noah had gone to bed, Veronica sat with Chris to review the next day's schedule. For the first time, Chris opened up about his life. "Have you ever wondered why I'm in a wheelchair?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the window. Veronica stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "I had a skiing accident," Chris began, his voice heavy with sorrow. "One reckless decision, and I paid for it with my future." He paused before adding, "But it wasn't just me. My fiancée." She couldn't handle seeing me like this. She left not long after. Veronica's throat tightened. I'm so sorry, she said softly. Chris shook his head. Don't be. I've grown used to the solitude. It's how I live. Veronica realized that behind Chris's bitterness and detachment was a deep well of pain. Understanding this made her even more determined to help him open up. A turning point came one afternoon as Noah played in the library. Suddenly, he had a severe asthma attack. Veronica panicked, frantically searching for his inhaler, but unable to find it. What's going on? Chris asked, noticing her distress. Noah, he's having an asthma attack, Veronica stammered, her hands trembling. Chris immediately moved closer. Calm down. Give me the inhaler. I can't find it, Veronica replied, her voice breaking. Chris scanned the room, quickly spotting Noah's bag. He retrieved the inhaler and handed it to Veronica. Keep his head elevated and help him take deep breaths, Chris instructed, his voice steady and firm. Following his directions, Veronica managed to stabilize Noah's breathing. As the boy clung to her, Veronica collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she said to Chris, her voice shaking with gratitude. Chris nodded, his eyes lingering on Noah. In that moment, Veronica saw a different side of him. Not the cold, bitter man he appeared to be, but someone who genuinely cared, even if he tried to hide it. That evening, after Noah had gone to sleep, Veronica returned to the library to thank Chris again. I wouldn't have known what to do without you, she said. Chris shrugged. He's a smart kid. I couldn't just stand by and watch him struggle. Veronica smiled, feeling the distance between them slowly shrinking. Chris didn't say anything more, but in his eyes, Veronica noticed a subtle change. It wasn't much, but it was meaningful. A fragile bond had begun to form, like a faint light breaking through a long, dark room. Chapter 3. Challenges and Secrets. The London sky bore a soft gray hue as faint sunlight filtered through the grand windows of the Blackwell mansion. Veronica, tidying up the library, accidentally nudged a bookshelf, causing it to slide back and reveal a hidden passage leading to the basement. What is this? She muttered, grabbing a flashlight from a nearby shelf and cautiously descending the stairs. The secret room unfolded before her like a forgotten treasure trove. The walls were covered with blueprints, schematics for motorized wheelchairs, and assistive devices. In the corner stood a dust-laden desk cluttered with incomplete models, as though time had frozen since Chris's accident. Veronica marveled at the ingenuity and creativity Chris once possessed. She quickly realized this was a part of his life he had kept hidden, a passion left behind in the wake of his trauma. That evening, Veronica decided to confront Chris. He was sitting in the living room, his gaze drifting aimlessly toward the garden. I found a room in the basement, she began cautiously. Chris turned, his eyes instantly hardening. You shouldn't wander around the house. Chris, don't do this. I saw your designs. They're incredible. You once created ideas that could change the lives of millions. Chris smirked bitterly. That's ancient history. I'm nothing now. That's not true, Veronica insisted. I see the potential in those designs. We can bring them back to life and make them a reality. Chris remained silent, his eyes reflecting inner turmoil. Her frankness stirred something within him. After a long pause, he sighed. Do you really think they're worth anything? I don't just think so. I know it. You're not just helping yourself. You're helping millions like you. In the days that followed, Chris began working on his designs again. With Veronica's help, they organized his documents and dusted off the remnants of his old ideas. Together, they sorted through the blueprints, selecting the most feasible projects. Veronica also reached out to tech companies and charitable organizations to seek support. Noah became an integral part of the project, his curiosity fueling endless questions about how the wheelchairs worked and their voice command features. One evening, as Chris and Veronica discussed technical details, Noah chimed in, Mr. Chris, what if your wheelchair could stop automatically when there's something in the way, like a car does? Chris looked at the boy, momentarily surprised. That's an excellent idea, Noah. I'll write it down. Noah's small but creative contributions not only advanced the project, but also inspired Chris. He began spending long hours in the workshop, seemingly rediscovering himself with each prototype and test run. However, their progress was disrupted when Victor, Chris's brother, unexpectedly arrived at the mansion. Tall, impeccably dressed, and with sharp, calculating eyes, Victor stormed into the living room like a whirlwind. "Chris," Victor began, his tone authoritative, "you need to stop wasting time on this nonsense. Sell the company and enjoy life. You're no longer capable of running it." Chris gripped the armrest of his wheelchair tightly, his expression darkening. "I don't need you to tell me what to do." Victor shrugged, his gaze sweeping disdainfully over Veronica and Noah, as if they were mere obstacles. "You know the company's value is plummeting. We need to focus on profitable ventures instead of these meaningless charity projects." "These projects aren't meaningless," Veronica interjected firmly. "We're creating something that will have a real impact on millions of lives. If you can't see that, maybe you're the one who shouldn't be in charge." Victor froze, his expression shifting from irritation to surprise. "Who are you to speak like that?" "I'm someone who sees that Chris still has the power to make a difference. He doesn't need you or anyone else to belittle him." Chris glanced at Veronica, a mix of gratitude and admiration filling his eyes. For the first time in years, someone had stood up for him in front of Victor. Victor sneered. "Fine. If you want to waste your time, so be it. But don't say I didn't warn you." He turned on his heel and stormed out, leaving behind a tense silence. After Victor's departure, Chris sat in quiet contemplation. Veronica joined him, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to prove anything to him," she said softly. "You just have to believe in yourself." Chris nodded, a rare smile gracing his lips. "Thank you, Veronica, for believing in me, even when I couldn't." The once cold mansion now felt warmer, filled with the shared efforts of the three of them. Victor's challenges only strengthened their resolve, not just to prove that Chris could achieve greatness, but to affirm the importance of pursuing meaningful goals. Their bond grew stronger, like a flicker of light in the darkness, steadily growing brighter and more resilient. Are you still following the story? Leave a comment with "smile" to let us know you're here. Don't forget to share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. Chapter 4: A Shared Mission. The morning in London was brisk, but the atmosphere inside a bright, modern conference room buzzed with intensity as skeptical gazes from potential investors bore down on Chris and Veronica. Standing beside Chris, her hand clutching a stack of presentation materials, Veronica exuded a calm confidence. Meanwhile, Chris sat composed in his specially designed wheelchair, his face serene, but his eyes ablaze with determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chris began, his steady voice commanding attention, "the designs I am about to present are not just technological innovations. They are opportunities to restore freedom and dignity to those with disabilities. I know this because I've experienced the loss of that freedom myself." Chris launched into his presentation, showcasing wheelchairs integrated with AI technology, features like adjustable height and voice recognition, allowing users to control the device with simple commands. Some investors initially wore expressions of doubt, raising pointed questions about feasibility and market potential. Sensing the rising tension, Veronica stepped forward. "These designs are not just about convenience," she said with conviction. "They're tools for life-changing impact. This is an opportunity to invest in humanity and meaningful innovation." An older investor leaned forward. "Ms. Clark, why do you believe in this project so strongly?" Veronica drew a deep breath. "Because I've witnessed the miracles these designs can bring, not just for Chris, but for my son as well. These ideas are not merely technology, they are hope." Her heartfelt response softened the room's mood. By the end of the tense presentation, they secured commitments from several investors. Chris and Veronica left the conference room with a sense of relief and excitement for the future. As time passed, Chris's new company began operations and quickly gained recognition. The advanced wheelchair designs received positive feedback from trial users, including hospitals and nonprofit organizations. Noah became the project's unofficial young ambassador, participating in presentations and offering a child's perspective on the technology's ease of use. His enthusiasm not only charmed attendees, but also reignited Chris's creative spirit. Yet just as everything seemed to be progressing smoothly, Veronica received a job offer from a prestigious NGO in Manchester. The higher salary and stability left her conflicted. Accepting the position would mean relocating and uprooting Noah from the life they had begun building with Chris. One evening, Veronica and Chris sat in the library, the flickering firelight casting shadows on the dark wood-paneled walls. "Chris, I've received a job offer," Veronica began, her voice steady but tinged with hesitation. "I haven't decided yet, but if I accept, I'll have to leave here." Chris's heart sank at her words. "It's a good opportunity. You should pursue it." "But I'm not sure." Veronica hesitated. "We've been working so well together. I don't want to lose that." Chris inhaled deeply, his eyes meeting hers. "Veronica, I don't want you to stay because of me. I want you to stay because we're building something meaningful together. If you leave, I'll support your decision. But I hope you see this place as more than just a job. It's a family." Tears welled in Veronica's eyes. "I'll think about it," she whispered. While Veronica was still mulling over her decision, Victor returned unexpectedly, armed with legal documents aiming to take control of the company. During an urgent meeting at the mansion, Victor declared that Chris was unfit to manage the business and threatened to take him to court. "Chris, you must understand that this company is our family's legacy," Victor said, his tone laced with arrogance. "You're gambling it away on projects with no future." For the first time, Chris didn't shy away. "Victor, this isn't just our family's legacy. This is an opportunity to change the lives of people like me." Victor smirked. "Do you really think you can beat me?" "He doesn't have to," Veronica interjected firmly. "Chris has a team behind him, people who believe in his vision, and I'm one of them." Noah, standing nearby, stepped forward and took Chris's hand. "Uncle Chris taught me not to be scared of bullies, even if they're bigger than me." Victor froze, speechless. Seeing Chris supported by Veronica and Noah, he realized his once unshakable authority had waned. After a long pause, Victor stood. "I'll let the courts decide," he said before leaving. Later that day, Chris returned to the library. Veronica and Noah were there, sketching ideas for new projects together. "Thank you," Chris said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't think I could have done this without you two." Veronica smiled warmly. "We're a team, remember?" Chris nodded, feeling a lightness in his heart for the first time in years. Their bond had grown beyond professional collaboration into something deeper, a new family built on trust, support, and love. The challenges ahead no longer felt like barriers, but stepping stones for their shared journey forward. Chapter 5. Love and Transformation. The charity gala took place in a luxurious hotel in central London, where shimmering lights reflected off glass walls and the elegant attire of the attendees. This was more than just the launch event for Chris's assistive technology company. It was also a moment for him to honor those who had walked with him through his journey of struggle and triumph. Chris, dressed impeccably in a black suit, sat center stage. His gaze no longer carried the sorrow of years past, but was filled with pride and determination. Around him, photos and videos showcased prototypes of AI-integrated wheelchairs, symbols of a brighter future for people with disabilities. As the stage lights focused on him, Chris began his speech. "Years ago, I thought my life was over. My accident didn't just take away my ability to walk, it took away my hope. But today I stand here, not only to launch this company, but to thank the people who helped me rediscover the meaning of life." His eyes searched the room until they landed on Veronica and Noah, sitting together, radiant and attentive. "Veronica Clark," Chris continued, his voice trembling slightly, "you taught me that limitations only exist in our minds. You didn't just help me face my pain, you gave me the courage to overcome it. And Noah, you are my greatest inspiration. You've shown me that nothing is impossible if we have faith and passion." The audience erupted into applause as Chris concluded with an important announcement. "I dedicate all of our achievements to those who refuse to let physical limitations define them. From this day forward, we will work tirelessly to ensure that technology isn't a privilege, but an opportunity for everyone." After the gala, in the tranquil garden behind the hotel, Chris and Veronica stood together under the soft glow of lanterns. Noah darted around the garden, laughing as he chased fireflies. "Veronica," Chris began, his voice warm and steady, "there's something I've been wanting to say for a long time." She turned to him, her clear eyes filled with understanding. You and Noah haven't just changed my life. You've become the family I always wished for but never thought I'd have. I don't just want to work with you, I want to build a life with you. Chris pulled out a small velvet box, revealing a beautifully crafted ring. Veronica Clark, will you marry me and build a family with Noah and me? Tears streamed down Veronica's cheeks as she nodded, her radiant smile lighting up her face. Yes, Chris, I will. Nearby, Noah raced over and threw his arms around both of them, shouting in joy, I'll have a real family, I'm so happy. A week later in the workshop at the mansion, the three of them worked together to assemble the first prototype of a new wheelchair design. Noah sat on the workbench, carefully handing tools to Chris, while Veronica helped double-check the components. Mom, Uncle Chris, we're like a superhero team, aren't we? Noah asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Exactly, Noah, Veronica replied, bending down to kiss his hair. We're a team, always. Chris smiled, his gaze filled with love as he looked at them both. And this team isn't just changing our lives, it's going to change the world. Noah's laughter filled the workshop, blending with the hum of tools, symbolizing a new beginning, a family built on love, trust, and transformation. Thank you for following this story. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to share with your friends, like, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. The golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the transparent glass windows of the top-floor office in Al Nahyan Tower, casting brilliant rays on the marble-covered walls. Sultan Al Nahyan, a powerful and famously cold-hearted millionaire, sat behind a massive mahogany desk, his sharp eyes fixed on the young woman sitting opposite him. Hana Farouk, dressed in a simple light blue dress, clasped her hands tightly on her lap. Despite her attempts to appear calm, the deep worry in her brown eyes was unmistakable. Ms. Farouk, I believe we both understand why you're here, Sultan said, his deep voice firm, succinct, and brimming with authority. Hana raised her head, her lips pressed into a thin line. She had once thought of Dubai, with all its grandeur, as a place that existed only in her dreams. Yet now, seated in this opulent office, she felt as though she was standing at an unexpected crossroad in her life. You want me to sign a contract, she said, her voice trembling slightly but laced with determination. But why me? You could choose anyone else. Sultan leaned forward, his dark gaze hardening with conviction. You are the ideal choice. First, you have the education and dignity necessary for this role. Second, your motivation stems from your family's survival, not greed. I don't need someone who's only after money. I need a reliable partner. Hana felt her chest tighten. Sultan's words were sharp and brutally realistic, cutting through her resolve like a blade. Yet he wasn't wrong. Her mother lay bedridden, fighting daily against the final stages of heart disease. The cost of surgery far exceeded her family's means, and the doctors had been clear. Without timely surgery, her mother only had a few months to live. Ms. Farouk, I'm not asking you to love me, Sultan continued, his steady tone revealing meticulous planning in every word. I need a legitimate marriage for 5 years. You will bear me a child to secure the future of the Al Nahyan family. In return, I will cover all medical expenses for your mother and ensure financial stability for your family throughout the duration of the contract. Hana stared at the man before her. He had everything: power, wealth, and an unnervingly magnetic presence. Yet none of it comforted her. Beneath the perfect suit was a stranger, with a heart seemingly made of ice, a man who appeared indifferent to emotions, concerned only with results. Why 5 years, she asked, trying to buy herself some time to think. 5 years is enough to stabilize everything, Sultan replied without hesitation. After that, we can dissolve the marriage amicably. You'll receive a substantial sum to start over. Hana remained silent, her mind spinning. Her pride was being tested, yet the image of her mother lying in a hospital bed left her no choice. All right, Hana said after a long pause, but I have one condition. You will not control my personal life. My emotions and my freedom are non-negotiable. Sultan narrowed his eyes at her, as if evaluating her resolve. After a moment he nodded, a cold smile appearing on his face. You have courage. I respect that. The agreement is accepted. As Hana placed the pen to paper, signing the contract, she felt as though she was stepping into an unfamiliar world, one dictated by terms and conditions. She silently promised herself to keep her heart guarded in this arrangement, but deep down, a lingering fear crept into her mind, whispering that fate might not make it so easy. Welcome to today's story. Let us know which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to never miss out on meaningful stories like this one. Chapter 1. Life in the Palace. The wedding day arrived, a radiant morning in Dubai, with sunlight streaming through the gilded domes of the Al Nahyan Palace. Hana stood before a mirror, dressed in a traditional ivory Arab wedding gown intricately embroidered with gold thread. A long veil was fastened with a sparkling diamond brooch. Everything appeared perfect, yet her heart felt heavy. The wedding was held in the palace gardens, where thousands of white roses were arranged to create a breathtaking maze. Influential figures from the worlds of business and politics gathered, forming a perfect tableau of power and opulence. As Hana walked down the aisle with her father, she felt the gaze of hundreds of guests fixed on her. Some nodded in approval at her beauty, but many other looks carried judgment, especially that of Aisha, Sultan's mother. The daughter of a poor teacher? Aisha whispered to a companion, her eyes never leaving Hana. What does she want but money? Hana overheard the murmurs but forced herself to keep her steps steady. She refused to appear weak before these strangers who felt so distant and cold. Standing beside Sultan, the man she had agreed to marry for reasons far removed from romance, she noticed he didn't even smile. When he extended his hand, it was rigid, as though this was nothing more than a business transaction. The vows were exchanged, the ring slipped on, yet everything unfolded like a meticulously staged performance. When Sultan leaned in to kiss her, his lips barely brushed her cheek, devoid of any emotion. The chill in every action was palpable. The reception that followed was a grand affair, filled with speeches, laughter, and the resonating sound of traditional music. Yet amidst all the grandeur, Hana felt lonelier than ever. Sultan spent most of the evening engrossed in conversations with business associates, leaving her to endure insincere congratulations alone. After the wedding, Hana moved into the Al Nahyan Palace, an architectural marvel with Persian carpets stretching down endless hallways and grand salons adorned with gold and pearls. Despite its beauty, the palace felt cold and unwelcoming to her. Sultan was rarely home. He spent most of his time at the office or in endless meetings. When he was at the palace, he kept his distance, speaking to Hana in brief, polite sentences, devoid of warmth or connection. This isn't a home, Hana thought one evening, as she sat alone in the vast dining room, staring at the long table draped in white silk. Sultan had informed her earlier that he'd be late, as usual. The servants moved quietly, serving dinner, but none spoke to her. She felt like an unwelcome guest in a house that was supposed to be hers. Another night, as she wandered the palace gardens, she spotted Sultan standing by the water fountain, gazing into the distance. He stood still, holding a glass of wine, his expression weighed down by something invisible yet immense. Hana wanted to approach him but stopped herself. He doesn't need me, she thought. This is just a contract. One afternoon, while walking through the palace's vast library, Hana stumbled upon an old photograph tucked between books on a desk. It depicted a young man with a radiant smile, standing beside a younger sultan. She instantly recognized Sultan's face, but the other man wasn't him. The family's elderly butler, Abbas, entered the room and noticed Hana holding the photo. He paused, his expression softening with sorrow. That is Khalid, Sultan's elder brother, Abbas said quietly. Hana turned to Abbas, her curiosity piqued. Khalid? Abbas nodded, his face shadowed by sadness. Master Khalid was the first heir of the Al Nahyan family, but he passed away in a car accident 10 years ago. An accident? Hana asked, sensing the pain in Abbas's voice. Yes, Abbas replied. Master Khalid was a kind soul, always trusting of others, but the accident changed everything. From that moment on, Master Sultan took on the family's responsibilities. Stepping into his brother's role, he became withdrawn and burdened with pressures no one else could truly understand. Hana stared at the photograph in her hand. Khalid's smile shone like a beacon from a forgotten past. She began to understand that behind Sultan's cold exterior was a man who had endured immense pain and loss. That evening, when Sultan returned home, Hana saw him differently. She no longer viewed him as merely a cold-hearted millionaire, but as a lonely man struggling to hide his grief. Yet she couldn't help but wonder if she could ever help him open up, or if this would always remain an emotionless arrangement. Chapter 2. Moments of Change. One quiet afternoon, Hana decided to explore the grand library within the palace, a treasure trove of ancient books and priceless artifacts. In a corner of the room, she discovered a wooden box with the name Khalid engraved in Arabic. Curiosity urged her to open it, and inside she found a collection of handwritten letters and a small journal. Carefully opening each letter, she realized they belonged to Khalid, Sultan's older brother. The letters revealed that Khalid had uncovered a massive corruption scheme orchestrated by a rival corporation involving forged contracts and falsified documents aimed at discrediting the Al Nahyan family. Khalid had been gathering evidence to expose the truth, but tragically died in a mysterious car accident on his way to an important meeting just weeks later. Hana felt the pain and regret woven into the words Khalid had left behind. That evening, she resolved to confront Sultan. "Have you ever read these letters?" Hana asked, placing the box on the desk in Sultan's study. Sultan glanced at the box, and his expression immediately darkened. His eyes grew cold as he looked at the letters. Slowly, he placed a hand on the box but didn't open it. "They don't mean anything anymore," Sultan said, his voice rough. "But Khalid was trying to protect your family. Don't you think you should finish what he started?" Hana looked directly at Sultan, her voice filled with determination. Sultan remained silent for a long time. Finally, he sighed, his gaze clouded as if reliving painful memories. "He trusted people, and it killed him. I couldn't protect Khalid. I will never forgive myself for that." Hana stepped closer, gently placing her hand on Sultan's shoulder. "You can't change the past, but you can do something to honor him. Khalid wouldn't want you to spend your life trapped in guilt like this." Hana's words pierced through Sultan's stoic exterior. He looked at her, and for the first time, there was a vulnerability in his eyes that he had never shown before. A few weeks later, Hana's mother underwent a critical surgery. Hana spent all her time at the hospital, her anxiety growing with each passing hour. Sultan didn't say much, but that night, as Hana fell asleep on a chair by her mother's bedside, he appeared. Sultan quietly took a seat near the door, watching over Hana and her mother. He motioned for the nurses to remain silent, not wanting to wake Hana. All night he stayed at the hospital, reading medical reports and occasionally glancing at Hana's mother to ensure everything was fine. When Hana woke up early the next morning, she was surprised to see Sultan still there. His eyes were bloodshot from lack of sleep, but he maintained his usual composed demeanor. "Have you been here all night?" Hana asked, unable to hide her astonishment. "It was the right thing to do," Sultan replied, looking straight at her. "I know how important your mother is to you. I wanted to make sure everything was all right." Hana felt the sincerity in Sultan's voice. For the first time, she didn't see a distant and cold man. She saw someone who cared, even if he didn't show it openly. Her heart stirred, and she couldn't stop herself from smiling at him. After the surgery, Hana's mother began to recover. To Hana's surprise, Sultan frequently visited the hospital, bringing small gifts and sharing humorous stories about life in Dubai. Her mother began to see him not just as a powerful man, but as a kind-hearted individual, albeit with a somewhat awkward way of expressing it. Meanwhile, Sultan started inviting Hana to the family's charitable events. He wanted her by his side, not just to maintain appearances, but because he realized her presence brought him an unexpected sense of peace. At a major fundraising gala, Hana impressed the guests with her sincerity and grace. She engaged in conversations with donors, proposed fresh ideas for charity projects, and even managed to win over Sultan's mother, who had once doubted her. "I must admit, my daughter-in-law is far more intelligent and capable than I thought," Aisha whispered to Sultan as they watched Hana conversing with a major donor. Sultan didn't reply, but his gaze never left Hana. Deep inside, a feeling he thought he'd never experience again began to grow. Hana was no longer just a contractual wife. She was someone special, someone who was slowly breaking down the walls he had built over the years. In the evenings, Sultan and Hana started talking more. She asked him about his childhood, the pressures he faced, and the responsibilities he carried. Sultan began to open up, and every story he shared, every memory he revealed, brought them closer. One late night, as they sat on the palace veranda, Sultan looked deeply into Hana's eyes and said, "You remind me that life isn't just about responsibilities. Maybe I've forgotten that for too long." Hana smiled, and for the first time she felt that their relationship was no longer just an agreement. Something genuine was beginning to form, and she knew she was no longer alone in this cold, unfamiliar world. Chapter 3. The Climax, the Truth Unveiled. One afternoon, while organizing the palace's grand library, Hana overheard a tense phone conversation between Sultan and his trusted assistant, Malik. Malik's voice was strained as he said, "We've discovered that the Al Rahim Corporation is preparing to release a fabricated report implying that the Al Nahyan family covered up Khalid's death to protect their assets." Hana froze in place. She didn't dare ask Sultan directly, but the tension in his demeanor over the following days was unmistakable. Sultan spent long hours in his office, meeting with advisors and lawyers. Hana began to realize that this was not just about the family's reputation. This was about the very survival of the Al Nahyan legacy. While tidying up Sultan's study, Hana found a folder filled with handwritten notes. It contained information about suspicious transactions and evidence showing that Al Rahim had manipulated data to discredit the Al Nahyan family. These actions not only threatened Sultan's reputation, but also jeopardized the charitable projects he was spearheading. Hana decided to investigate further. She knew Sultan would never let her get involved in something dangerous, but she couldn't stand by idly while his family and he were under attack. At a high-profile fundraising gala, attended by influential figures from major corporations, Hana discreetly observed the representatives from Al Rahim. Amid the music and wine, she overheard a conversation between two senior executives. "This is the perfect time to release the report," one of them said. "Sultan will never dare to reveal what really happened to Khalid. Everything has been set up." "Exactly. He won't just lose his reputation. He'll lose everything. We'll bring the Al Nahyan family to its knees." Hana quietly pulled out her phone and began recording their conversation, her hands trembling as she tried not to draw attention. But as she turned to leave, one of the men noticed her. "Wait!" the man called out loudly. "What did you just do?" Hana immediately turned and bolted, weaving through the crowd in search of an escape. But before she could reach the door, two men from Al Rahim blocked her path. "What do you think you're doing?" one of them demanded, his tone menacing. Hana tried to remain calm. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. You're gathering evidence against us. Do you really think you can get away with this?" They dragged her to a secluded corner, their cold eyes filled with threat. Just as the situation seemed dire, a commanding voice rang out, firm and authoritative. "Let her go immediately." Hana turned to see Sultan standing there, his face stern and his eyes burning with fury. The two men faltered, their confidence evaporating as they recognized him. "Sultan," one of them stammered, trying to maintain composure. "This is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Sultan strode forward, positioning himself protectively in front of Hana. "A misunderstanding when you're threatening my wife?" Without waiting for a reply, Sultan called for the palace security team. The two men were swiftly escorted out of the gala, and Sultan wasted no time in taking Hana home. On the way back, the car was steeped in silence, except for the tension emanating from Sultan. "What were you thinking?" Sultan finally asked, his deep voice steady but laced with concern. "Do you have any idea how much danger you put yourself in?" "I couldn't stand by while they tried to destroy you," Hana replied, her voice shaking with emotion. "I wanted to help you, Sultan. I couldn't let them win." Sultan pulled the car to the side of the road and turned to face her. "You have no idea how important you are to me, do you? Hana, I can't lose you, not even for a second." Hana could hear the sincerity in his voice, and her heart melted. This wasn't just a husband by contract anymore. Sultan truly cared for her. The next day, Sultan decided to take action. Armed with Hana's recording and years of evidence he had meticulously gathered, he organized a major press conference to expose the truth. Sultan laid bare Al Rahim's schemes, from their attempts to sabotage the Al Nahyan family to fabricating evidence surrounding Khalid's death. My family has endured loss and pain for years, Sultan declared at the press conference. But today the truth will prevail. I will no longer remain silent. No one has the right to exploit my brother's death for their greed. The press conference sent shockwaves through the business world. Al Rahim was immediately placed under investigation, and their investors began pulling out en masse. Sultan not only protected his family's honor, but also freed himself from the burden of his past. When Sultan returned to the palace that evening, Hana was waiting for him. He pulled her into his arms for the first time without reservation. "Thank you, Hana," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Without you, I wouldn't have had the courage to face this." Hana smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "You didn't just face it, Sultan. You conquered it." In that moment, they both realized that their relationship had grown far beyond a contractual agreement. They had found something far more valuable: trust and love. Chapter 4. Love Beyond the Contract. That morning, the Dubai sun cast its first golden rays through the large windows of the palace's study. Sultan sat quietly in a leather armchair, staring at the marriage contract laid out on the desk before him. Every clause, every stipulation now seemed meaningless. What had started as a transaction had evolved into something far deeper. Each time he thought of Hana, his heart ached, not from obligation, but from love. That evening, Sultan invited Hana to dinner in the palace garden. The area was adorned with the soft glow of lanterns and the delicate fragrance of white jasmine blooms. Hana stepped out, wearing a simple yet elegant dress, her expression one of surprise at the beautiful setup. "Did you prepare all of this?" she asked, her eyes wide. "I did," Sultan replied, pulling out a chair for her. "I thought we needed an evening just for us, not for responsibilities or any clauses." Throughout the meal, Sultan spoke about the thoughts that had consumed him recently, the burdens he carried, the walls he had built, and the emotions he could no longer deny. Finally, he placed his hand on the table, looking directly into Hana's eyes. "Hana," Sultan began, his voice deep and filled with emotion. "I can't keep pretending that this relationship is just a contract. You've changed me, breaking down every barrier I've built. I love you, not because you're someone I needed, but because you're someone I can't live without." Hana sat frozen, the sincerity in Sultan's words piercing her soul. Before she could respond, Sultan pulled an envelope from his pocket and placed it on the table. "This is our contract," he said, taking out the papers inside. "It was what bound us before, but now I realize it holds no meaning anymore." Without hesitation, Sultan tore the contract into pieces, each fragment falling onto the table like the release of a heavy burden. "I don't need a contract to keep you by my side, Hana. What I need is you, as the woman I love." Then Sultan stood, knelt on one knee before her, and took her hand. "Hana Farouk, will you marry me again? Not out of duty, but out of love?" Hana looked at Sultan, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. Every word he spoke, every action he took, resonated deeply within her. She thought back to when they first met, a cold, distant man who had always protected her in his quiet, unwavering way. The moments they shared, the times he put her happiness above all else, made her realize she had fallen for him without even knowing it. "Do you really think I could say no?" Hana laughed, tears streaming down her cheeks. She held his hand tightly, her eyes shining. "I've asked myself about my feelings so many times, but now I have no doubts. I love you, Sultan, not for your wealth or power, but for the person you truly are behind that mask." Sultan stood, pulling Hana into his arms, holding her as if afraid she might vanish. "You've given me something I thought I could never have. Love and hope," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Hana smiled in his embrace. "Then let's start again, not as two strangers, bound by a contract, but as two people in love, ready to build a real life together." Sultan leaned down, kissing Hana tenderly. It wasn't a kiss of obligation or duty, it was a kiss of love, genuine, profound, and full of emotion. Under the gentle glow of the lanterns, they began a new journey together, free from conditions or barriers, bound only by a love that had overcome everything. Epilogue. Hana and Sultan's journey had faced countless obstacles, from coldness and past pain to family pressure and heavy responsibilities. Yet their love had broken down every wall, allowing their hearts to find one another freely. Are you still following their story? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback is invaluable to us. Chapter 5. Family and Love. A year later, the radiant morning sunlight filled the small garden of Sultan and Hana's new villa. Pristine white jasmine bushes bloomed, exuding a gentle fragrance. Unlike their first grand and lavish wedding, this time Sultan and Hana celebrated their union with a simple, intimate ceremony attended only by family and close friends. Hana emerged wearing a long, modest gown that gracefully embraced her figure, now carrying their second child. Her face glowed with happiness, a stark contrast to the apprehension she had felt on their first wedding day. Sultan waited under an arch adorned with white and gold roses, his eyes filled with deep affection. As Hana approached, he gently placed a hand on her growing belly, a gesture both tender and full of pride. The ceremony unfolded in a warm and loving atmosphere, with blessings from Hana's mother, Sultan's once skeptical mother Aisha, and Daniel, Hana's younger brother. Aisha's eyes reflected joy as she witnessed her son finally find true happiness. As they exchanged vows, Sultan gazed into Hana's eyes and said, "I once believed happiness wasn't meant for me, but you've changed everything. You've given me love and helped me rediscover myself. I promise to always love and protect you and our growing family, forever." Hana smiled, tears glistening on her cheeks. "I once thought I entered this marriage out of obligation, but now I know it was destiny. I love you, Sultan, and I promise to build a life of love and gratitude with you." When they kissed amidst the cheers and blessings of those around them, laughter and the melody of traditional musicians filled the air. It was a new beginning, free from contracts and distance, built solely on love. Months after the wedding, Sultan and Hana launched the Khalid Al Nahyan Foundation, dedicated to aiding orphans and struggling families across the Middle East. Sultan allocated all profits from old family projects and a portion of his company's revenue to establish this foundation as a tribute to the brother he cherished. Hana became Sultan's partner in every way, supporting him not just organizationally, but also by personally visiting remote villages and helping families in need. During a visit to an orphanage, Hana said to Sultan, "Khalid would be so proud of what you've done. You've turned pain into something profoundly meaningful." Sultan clasped her hand, smiling softly. "It's not just me. You inspired me to do this. You've always reminded me that from the greatest loss, we can find the greatest purpose." Together, they made a real impact, transforming Khalid's legacy into a beacon of hope for thousands who needed it. One serene afternoon in their villa garden, Sultan and Hana played with their 3-year-old daughter, Amal, a lively little girl with big, sparkling eyes and a radiant smile, while their infant son slept peacefully in a nearby cradle. Sultan lifted Amal into the air, spinning her around and making her laugh gleefully. Hana sat nearby on a chair, gently rocking the cradle, her gaze brimming with love as she watched her husband and daughter. She realized that all the struggles and pain they had endured had led to this moment, a complete, joyous family. "What are you thinking about?" Sultan asked, setting Amal down and sitting beside Hana. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "I'm thinking about our journey, from a cold, contractual start to true love. Who would have thought we'd end up here?" Sultan held her hand, gently kissing it. "I can't imagine my life without you, Hana. You've changed everything, not just for me, but for our family." She chuckled, glancing at their children, then back at him. "And you've taught me that love doesn't always start sweetly. Sometimes it has to overcome the greatest trials to become unbreakable." As the sun set, casting a golden glow over their garden, they looked toward the future together, a family filled with love, gratitude, and hope. They knew that true love not only healed wounds, but also had the strength to overcome every barrier, turning the impossible into reality. The story ends with the joyous image of Sultan and Hana's family, carrying a message that true love is not just an emotion, but also a commitment and courage to face challenges together. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Let us know your thoughts on this story in the comments below. What type of stories would you like to hear next? Don't forget to like, share this story, and subscribe to our channel for more. Nathan Ellis stood before the mirror in his luxurious penthouse apartment, adjusting the collar of his expensive shirt. He frowned slightly, pondering why he had agreed to join a double date tonight. Lucas, his best friend from college, had been begging him all week to help him meet Michelle, the woman Lucas secretly admired. But Michelle didn't want to go alone, and to avoid making her uncomfortable, she suggested bringing along her best friend. Nathan reluctantly agreed, simply because Lucas couldn't bear the thought of being rejected. "It's just one evening," Nathan told himself as he pressed the elevator button. With his dashing looks and innate confidence, he always believed he could turn any situation to his advantage. Besides, I've got nothing to lose. The restaurant chosen was a high-end venue where warm golden lights illuminated pristine white tablecloths, and the air was filled with a faint, soothing scent of roses. Nathan walked in, his eyes scanning the room to find Lucas. It didn't take long to spot his friend, seated near the window with Michelle. Next to her sat a woman with soft, naturally flowing brown hair, wearing a simple yet elegant jade green dress. As Nathan approached the table, he paused briefly. Sophie Dawson, Michelle's friend, was nothing like he had imagined. Lucas had described her as simple and somewhat shy, but before him sat a woman exuding calm and grace. The faint scar on her left cheek only added to her uniqueness, as if a testament to inner strength Nathan couldn't ignore. "Hi, I'm Nathan," he said, his voice steady though his eyes betrayed his curiosity. Sophie looked up at him, smiling faintly. "I'm Sophie. Nice to meet you." Her voice was warm, enough to make Nathan feel something unfamiliar beginning to stir. Throughout the evening, as Lucas and Michelle's conversation grew lively, Nathan found himself drawn to Sophie's way of speaking. She shared stories about her work at a nonprofit organization with a passion and sincerity that took Nathan by surprise. Though he often prided himself on his knowledge, he felt small in the presence of Sophie's intellect and inspiring heart. When the evening ended, Nathan realized something he had never considered before. Not appearances or success, but genuine kindness and sincerity were what truly made someone remarkable. What he thought would be a simple evening diversion had unexpectedly become a turning point he never anticipated. Welcome to Soul Stories. Today we bring you a meaningful story about love. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to catch more inspiring stories. Chapter 1. The Awkward Date. Nathan Ellis sat across from Sophie Dawson, the soft lighting of the upscale restaurant illuminating the awkwardness on her face. Nathan smirked slightly, maintaining a polite demeanor, though inwardly he had already resigned himself to what he expected to be a long, drawn-out evening. He despised being roped into forced social gatherings, and this was far from how he wanted to spend his Saturday night. "Thank you for helping Lucas," said Michelle, Lucas's calm and composed date. "I know this isn't something you usually do." Nathan gave a slight nod, his gaze briefly flicking to Sophie. "It's nothing," he said simply, turning his attention back to the glass of wine in front of him. Sophie, dressed in an understated jade green dress, stirred her lemonade quietly. She could sense Nathan's aloofness, but instead of feeling intimidated, found it amusing. It wasn't every day that someone like her encountered a man like Nathan, wealthy, handsome, and exuding self-assuredness. Yet his indifference somehow made her feel less pressured. The meal began with light conversation. Lucas and Michelle were quickly engrossed in their own world, leaving Nathan and Sophie in an atmosphere of palpable unease. True to his usual demeanor, Nathan stuck to superficial small talk, but Sophie, unwilling to let the silence stretch on, decided to engage him. "So Nathan, what do you do for a living?" she asked with a smile. "Lucas mentioned you're quite successful." Nathan set his wine glass down, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face. "I run an investment firm. Nothing too exciting." "Sounds complicated," Sophie replied with a smile. "I'm not great with finances, but I imagine you have to be pretty decisive to do well in that line of work." Nathan shrugged. "Decisiveness is part of it, but the key is knowing the game you're playing." His tone carried a trace of pride. Sophie paused briefly, then shifted the topic. I work for a nonprofit organization that helps children with disabilities. It's a completely different kind of game, I suppose. Nathan was momentarily caught off guard, but masked his reaction quickly. That kind of work must be challenging. It is, but it's also very fulfilling, Sophie said, her eyes lighting up as she spoke about her job. We recently completed a project building a playground designed for children with disabilities. Every child deserves a safe space to play and grow, just like anyone else. Initially uninterested, Nathan found himself intrigued. He hadn't expected someone as unassuming as Sophie to speak about her work with such passion. How do you fund these projects? He asked, keeping his tone casual. We host events, seek sponsorships from companies, and sometimes rely on the kindness of the community, Sophie explained. You'd be surprised how willing people are to help when they understand the impact of what they're contributing to. Nathan raised an eyebrow, sensing an implicit challenge in her words. He wasn't used to being subtly grouped with those who might be unwilling to help, but instead of feeling offended, he found it oddly compelling. After dessert, Michelle and Lucas decided to leave early, leaving Nathan and Sophie alone at the table. Nathan felt momentarily uneasy, but quickly regained his composure. Looks like we've been abandoned, Sophie joked, a faint smile on her lips. Nathan looked at her, noticing for the first time the quiet confidence she exuded. It seems so, he replied, pouring more wine into his glass. Their conversation began to flow more naturally. Nathan discovered that Sophie not only had deep knowledge of social issues, but also a keen interest in art and culture. She spoke about attending small art exhibitions in the city, expressing her admiration for the subtleties of Van Gogh's works and the boldness of Picasso's creations. Do you like art? Sophie asked. Nathan chuckled. I like investing in art. Expensive paintings are a safe asset. Sophie laughed. So you appreciate art for its value, not its beauty? Nathan couldn't help but laugh with her. Maybe I should learn to see it the way you do. Sophie looked at him, sensing a rare moment of honesty from the man across the table. For the first time that evening, she felt a genuine connection. As the evening concluded, Nathan walked out of the restaurant with Sophie by his side. Contrary to his initial expectations, he found himself thinking the evening hadn't been a waste of time. Sophie wasn't like anyone he had ever met, not someone trying to impress or appear perfect. She was simply herself, and it felt refreshing. Sophie, he said as she prepared to step into the cab Lucas had ordered, I think we should meet again. Sophie looked surprised but couldn't hide her smile. We'll see, Nathan, she replied, leaving him standing there with an inexplicable feeling he couldn't quite place. Chapter 2. A Shift in Perspective. Nathan Ellis sat in the luxurious office of his skyscraper penthouse, a cup of cold coffee untouched on the table, as his gaze wandered through the glittering skyline of New York City. Yet he wasn't truly seeing any of it. The image of Sophie Dawson, with her gentle smile and bright eyes, lingered in his mind, refusing to fade. He couldn't understand why last night's dinner preoccupied him so much. What was supposed to be a simple favor for his best friend Lucas had now become the center of his thoughts. Sophie was unlike any woman he had ever met. There was something different about her, an understated confidence and a quiet magnetism that didn't seek attention yet held it effortlessly. That afternoon, after much deliberation, Nathan picked up his phone and sent a message. Sophie, I want to thank you for last night. If you're free, would you like to grab coffee tomorrow? Nathan wasn't used to feeling hesitant when reaching out to someone. Confidence, sometimes bordering on arrogance, was his default mode. Yet now a flicker of nervousness crept into his thoughts as he awaited her response. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed with a new message. Hi, Nathan. Thank you for the invitation. I didn't expect it, but I'll be there. Let's meet at Cafe Verona at 3 p.m. A strange sense of relief washed over him. He couldn't explain why, but the idea of seeing Sophie again filled him with both curiosity and anticipation. Cafe Verona, with its cozy ambiance and soft natural light, was the perfect place for a quiet meeting. When Nathan arrived, he spotted Sophie already seated at a corner table near the window, a small book resting on the table before her. She looked relaxed in a simple cream-colored dress, her hair neatly tied back. Nathan, she greeted him with a warm smile, you're right on time. For the first time in my life, I'll admit that being punctual was a priority today, Nathan joked, taking a seat across from her. Their conversation began with casual questions, but as the minutes passed, the walls between them seemed to fade. To Nathan's surprise, he found himself opening up in a way he rarely did. People think being a millionaire is a dream come true, he began, his gaze fixed on his coffee cup. But no one talks about the pressure. Everyone expects perfection, from business partners, employees, even family. Sophie listened attentively, her eyes reflecting genuine understanding. I imagine that kind of pressure isn't easy to handle, she said softly, but the fact that you face it every day shows you're stronger than you think. Nathan chuckled lightly, a flicker of comfort warming his chest. Thank you. Honestly, no one's ever said that to me before. Sophie then shared her story, pausing occasionally to sip her tea. When I was a child, I had a serious accident, she began, her fingers brushing the faint scar on her cheek. I had to undergo multiple surgeries and wear leg braces for years. Those injuries weren't just physical, they left emotional scars too. I was often teased for how I looked. Nathan listened intently, not interrupting. But instead of letting it define me, I chose to turn it into motivation, Sophie continued. I wanted to help others, people who've been hurt or feel abandoned, just as I once did. That's why I chose to work for a nonprofit. A wave of shame washed over Nathan. He recalled his initial coldness towards Sophie during their first meeting and the judgments he had made based solely on her unassuming appearance and the faint scar on her face. Those thoughts now seemed utterly irrelevant. Sophie, he said, meeting her eyes, I owe you an apology. I judged you based on appearances and my own assumptions. I was wrong. Sophie smiled, the kindness in her eyes making Nathan feel at ease. I've grown used to that, Nathan, but thank you for saying it. After their meeting, Nathan felt as though a new door had been opened. His perspective began to shift. At work, he started paying more attention to the stories of his employees rather than merely evaluating their performance. He also began to involve himself in the charitable activities he had previously only supported financially without much thought. Sophie, without realizing it, had become a catalyst for this change in Nathan. To her, compassion and authenticity were not grand gestures, but small, everyday actions that held profound meaning. Nathan told himself this was only the beginning. He didn't just want to change for himself, he wanted to prove to Sophie that he could be someone worthy of her trust and partnership. Chapter 3. Challenges and Conflicts. The relationship between Nathan Ellis and Sophie Dawson deepened as they spent more time together. Evening coffee dates at small cafes, leisurely strolls in the park, and hours-long conversations brought them closer. Yet amidst this growing warmth, challenges began to emerge, threatening the fragile balance they had built. Nathan, accustomed to lavish parties and elite social circles, started to feel the pressure from those around him. At a high-profile business gathering, his friends couldn't resist questioning his relationship with Sophie. Are you really dating her? Andrew, one of his friends, teased. She seems a bit ordinary, doesn't she? Exactly, another chimed in. We're used to seeing you with models or designers, but now, he shrugged, leaving his implication hanging in the air. Nathan's chest tightened. He didn't want to justify or defend his relationship to people who knew nothing about Sophie, yet their words lingered, stirring thoughts he thought he had already overcome. When Nathan shared this incident with Sophie, she offered a faint, bittersweet smile. Nathan, I know I'm not the kind of person they expect you to be with. And honestly, I don't need their approval. As long as you understand me, that's enough. Nathan grasped her hand, his gaze steady. I don't care what they think. As long as I have you, nothing else matters. But deep down, Nathan knew the societal pressure wouldn't simply disappear. One morning, Sophie received an email from an international nonprofit organization she had dreamed of working with. The email contained an offer, the position of project director in an East African country. It was an opportunity she couldn't easily refuse, a job that could impact thousands of children in need. However, the thought of leaving Nathan filled Sophie with turmoil. She loved him, and their relationship had become a significant part of her life. Yet if she let this opportunity pass, she would always wonder if she had abandoned a vital part of her dream. One evening, as they shared dinner at Nathan's apartment, Sophie decided to tell him about the offer. Nathan, she began, her voice gentle but serious, I received a job offer from the international organization I mentioned before. Nathan set down his fork, his eyes filled with interest. Really? That's incredible. So when do you start? Sophie hesitated, her gaze meeting his. The issue is, the job requires me to move to East Africa. Her words seemed to weigh down the room. Nathan looked at her, trying to grasp the full meaning behind what she was saying. Does that mean you'll leave here? Leave me? He asked, his voice suddenly subdued. I don't know, Sophie admitted. I love you, Nathan, but this is my dream, a chance that may never come again. Nathan stood, walking to the window where the city lights sparkled against the night sky. His heart clenched. The thought of losing Sophie was unbearable. Sophie, he said, turning to face her, I don't want you to go. I've never been afraid of losing someone like I'm afraid of losing you. Sophie rose from her seat, stepping closer to him. Nathan, I understand how you feel, but I don't want a relationship that makes me give up on who I am. I can't walk away from this opportunity and live with the regret of not following my dream. And what about me? Nathan asked, his voice thick with disappointment and fear. Aren't I part of your dream? Aren't we supposed to be the most important thing to each other? Tears shimmered in Sophie's eyes. You are the most important person to me, Nathan, but real love shouldn't force me to give up on the person I want to become. If you love me, you'll understand that. Nathan felt like his world was crumbling. He wanted to hold on to Sophie, but he also knew that forcing her to stay would only drive her further away. They didn't speak for days after the argument. Nathan buried himself in work, searching for a way to hold on to Sophie without making her feel constrained. Meanwhile, Sophie wrestled with her own emotions. She loved Nathan, but she also knew that if she gave up this chance, she wouldn't truly be herself anymore. One afternoon, Nathan appeared at the nonprofit organization where Sophie worked, holding a small bouquet of flowers, a rare gesture for him. When Sophie saw him, her heart ached. If this is what you want, I'll support you, Nathan said, his voice more sincere than ever. I won't stop you from pursuing your dream, but I want you to know that I'll be here, waiting for you no matter where you are. Tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. She embraced him, feeling the sincerity in his every word. I don't want to leave you, she said, but I know I have to do this. Thank you for understanding. Sophie decided to accept the job, and a few weeks later she prepared to leave for East Africa. Nathan accompanied her to the airport, his gaze filled with love and a tinge of sadness. Go and do amazing things, he said, hugging her tightly one last time. I'll be here when you come back. I'll never forget you, Nathan, Sophie whispered, tears streaming down her face. You've shown me that love isn't about holding on. It's about giving each other the freedom to grow. As Sophie walked through the security gate, Nathan stood watching her until she disappeared from view. His heart felt heavy, but he knew this wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter in their story. Chapter 4. Love and Sacrifice. After Sophie left, Nathan Ellis's luxurious penthouse felt emptier than ever. Lavish parties, major projects, and important meetings no longer brought him excitement. Every moment, Sophie's image filled his mind. Her gentle smile, steadfast gaze, and a heart overflowing with love and compassion. Nathan realized that love wasn't just about keeping someone close. It was about giving them the freedom to pursue their dreams. But if there was a way to support Sophie while keeping her near, he knew he had to find it. One morning, Nathan sat at his mahogany desk, staring at the project plans Sophie had left behind for supporting children with disabilities. The numbers, ideas, and goals on paper made him feel both admiration and a burning desire to be part of her dream. That afternoon, Nathan called Sophie. The phone line stretched across thousands of miles, yet her voice was as gentle as he remembered. Nathan? I didn't expect you to call. I wanted to talk to you, Nathan began, his heart pounding. I've been thinking a lot, Sophie. I know how important your work is, but I also don't want us to be apart. What if there was a way for you to have both your dream and your love? Sophie was silent, a mix of surprise and curiosity evident in her tone. What do you mean? Nathan took a deep breath, then spoke slowly. I want to sponsor you to open a center for children with disabilities here in the city. A place where you can realize your vision without having to leave. Sophie felt a lump in her throat. Nathan's proposal was both unexpected and deeply meaningful. Nathan, you don't have to do this. I'm not doing this out of obligation, Nathan interrupted. I'm doing it because I love you. You've changed the way I see the world. I want to be with you, but I also want to see you happy. This is how I can do both. After days of contemplation, Sophie called Nathan back. This time, her voice was steady. Nathan, I don't know how to thank you. I'll come back, but not just for you. I believe this center can create a big impact, and I want us to build it together. Nathan smiled as he heard her agreement. He couldn't wait to get started. In the following weeks, they both threw themselves into the project. Nathan used his resources and connections to secure a location, garner support from businesses, and prepare the infrastructure. Sophie, with her experience and passion, took charge of planning, hiring staff, and organizing activities. The center gradually took shape. Named Haven of Hope, it would become a sanctuary for underprivileged children, providing education, care, and development opportunities in a nurturing environment. On the grand opening day, the center buzzed with joy and laughter. Tables were neatly set up, volunteers and staff bustled about, and families arrived with their children, whose eyes lit up as they explored the thoughtfully designed learning and play areas. Nathan stepped onto the stage dressed in a sharp suit but exuding genuine warmth. Holding the microphone, he addressed the crowd. Thank you all for being here today. This center isn't just a project, it's a symbol of hope and change. But none of this would have been possible without the inspiration of one incredible person, Sophie Dawson. His gaze found Sophie in the crowd. Sophie, you've changed my life. You've taught me to see the world not just through numbers or success, but through kindness and hope. You've made me a better person. To everyone's surprise, Nathan knelt down, pulling a small box from his pocket. He opened it to reveal a sparkling ring. Sophie Dawson, will you build a meaningful future with me? Not just in our work, but in life? Will you marry me? Tears glistened in Sophie's eyes as she stepped onto the stage. Without hesitation, she nodded. Yes, Nathan, I will. Cheers erupted from the audience, children laughed and ran around, and the atmosphere was filled with love and joy. It was a sweet and emotional moment where love and sacrifice converged. After the grand opening, Nathan and Sophie were not just a couple in love, but partners in a shared mission. The Haven of Hope became their pride, a place that brought hope to hundreds of children. In the quiet evenings they spent together, they reflected on their journey, grateful for finding each other. Sophie wasn't just Nathan's inspiration, she was the heart and soul of the positive changes they had created. As Sophie once said, true love isn't about holding on, but about building something greater together. Thank you for listening. What did you think of this story? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.